I have made it clear that America will not base our entire foreign policy on reacting to terrorism. And when it comes to America and Islam, there is no us and them, there is only us. Today, all of our troops have left Iraq, having achieved its mission of dismantling the core of Al-Qaeda. In a summer marked by instability in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, I know the world also took notice of Ferguson, Missouri, where a young man was killed and a community was divided. We have our own racial and ethnic tensions.
Incredible.
The Brock Lawley Show.
When I'm elected, I will suspend immigration from areas of the world where there is a proven history of terrorism against the United States, Europe, or our allies, until we fully understand how to end these threats. And by the way, we have no choice. After full, impartial, and really long overdue security assessment, we will develop a responsible immigration policy that serves the interests and values of America. We cannot continue to allow thousands upon thousands of people to pour into our country, many of whom have the same thought process as this savage killer. Many of the principles of radical Islam are incompatible with Western values and institutions. Remember this: radical Islam is anti-woman, anti-gay, and anti-American. I refuse to allow America to become a place where gay people, Christian people, Jewish people are targets of persecution and intimidation by radical Islamic preachers of hate and violence.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Brock Lawley program. Hearing that, why don't you stand up your seats, ladies and gentlemen? Stand up in your seats, people, sing a hallelujah, amen. I know you want to shout it. I know you want to shout it. Seriously, millions and millions and millions of Americans, like in one huge voice, the choir of common sense, just applauding like water touching our tongues. Sahara desert of nonsense. After 7.5 years of nonsense, an American leader stands up and just calls a spade a spade. Is that not the easiest way to put it? And it doesn't matter what the left does. This is still going to sail right down the plate. Doesn't matter what they do.
We don't have a strategy yet. I think folks are getting a little further ahead of where we're at than we currently are. And I think that's not just my...
For 7.5 years, some version of that pablum nonsense, gibberish, nothingness, and body bag zip, and blood spills in the streets, and parents receiving phone calls, and Americans bleed at the hand of this cancer, at the hands of this cult, at the hands of radical Islam, which just spreads like a rash, and then a poison in the veins, and nothing more nothing, and then dressing nothing up like something, only to be followed by more nothing. This, by the way, I just want to remind my listeners, this is what it sounded like when we used to have a leader at the helm of this nation.
And for us to ignore, by inaction, the slaughter of American civilians and American soldiers, whether in nightclubs or airline terminals, is simply not in the American tradition. When our citizens are abused or attacked anywhere in the world, we will respond so long as I'm in this Oval Office. Self-defense is not only our right, it is our duty. I salute the skill and professionalism of the men and women of our armed forces who carried out this mission. It's an honor to be your commander-in-chief. Despite our repeated warnings, he counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong. I warned that there should be no place on earth where terrorists can rest and train and practice their deadly skills. I meant it. I said that we would act with others if possible and alone if necessary to ensure that terrorists have no sanctuary anywhere.
Yes, it's very possible we've forgotten the tone, the resonance of leadership. That's what it sounds like. This, however, is the man who sits in the Oval Office of your country in 2016.
But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy yet.
Now, if you're like many people, you're sitting there wondering, what in the world could this possibly be? I mean, there's not really any more room for reasonable people to dance around the floor, so to speak, with this stuff. What not only America, but the world has on its hands is a blatant and obvious totalitarian death cult. Needs to be dealt with. Has to be dealt with. There's no other option. There's not like this easier plan. And so why then, since that's so blatantly clear, and of course what do we have? San Bernardino, we have Brussels, we have Paris. I mean, this, like when I say it's not debatable, it's not even because I'm thinking to myself, there's not two political sides to a coin on issues. There's not two approaches to things. It's just obvious that this is Islam. It hates the West. It's attacking the innocent, and this needs to be dealt with. Now, why then? The question is why? Well, I think there's so many reasons for that. I think the answers in regards to your present president are very muddy, and we'll get to that at the end of this podcast. But I think when it just comes to leftism and why leftism is not fit to handle this, there's the sort of timeless stuff, which is just the left is dovish and they just don't understand real evil. And then there's the more nuanced, for those of you who don't follow politics at all, this is basically what's happening. The left has thrown their entire pile of poker chips in on this sort of political correct racket where they just simply cannot address this stuff as it properly stands. They cannot do it because the rest of their entire infrastructure comes crumbling down, right? They have to hold up these victims. And Islam has to be a persecuted group. It can't be a perpetrator of evil. It has to be a receiver of evil. And think about this. The second they double back, the second they give in on this, there's so many millions of Americans screaming at the TV, why aren't you being honest about this? Why aren't you addressing this? The second they give in on this, ladies and gentlemen, then huge gaping cracks emerge in their entire political structure. What are they saying to you? It's not Islamic terror. What is it? It's our fault, right? It's America's fault. It's our values. It's our bigotry. It's our lack of ability to get along with people, or we're doing things or saying things that are inviting this. This is like their whole power thing, their whole ruse, their whole house of cards, so to speak, is all built around this sort of fiction. And they've been able to colonize, if you will, this craziness all over the place in discussing homosexuality and discussing social engineering stuff and creating victims out of every little possible caveat that they could wedge in this nation. And it all kind of circles around not addressing real issues, creating fake issues, pitting people against each other, not against each other in valid reasons, but in fabricated reasons so that they can exploit those divisions for political reasons. So real evil and real terror can't be addressed head on because there's all these victim pockets that then take on water, so to speak. The second the left turns around and calls a spade here, if tomorrow Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whoever the tip of the spear is, just says we got a serious problem with radical Islam, we're going to address this problem, we're going to go after it. This requires a framework, a thinking, a culture in this country that they would have to create. That is an antithesis. It's its complete antithesis to everything they do. America is wrong. America's culture is wrong. White Anglo-Saxon Christian culture is wrong, right? So the second you unify that, you say that's under attack. That's threatened by an entity that we've already established as a victim caveat of society. Everything comes crumbling. Everything gets questioned. People start to scratch their head and say, none of this is making sense. So they, ladies and gentlemen, they have to feed this beast of BS, lies, transparent reversal of victim and perpetrator and victim. They have to feed this. They really got themselves in this situation where they have no choice. If they ever address this problem, the whole thing is going to come crumbling down. The emperor is going to be shown to be wearing no clothes. Leftism is really vulnerable, and that's why they never will. And I tell you that because we're at a point now as a civilization where we don't even have the luxury of that idiocy. I mean, we just really don't. We don't have the luxury of indulging that idiocy anymore. You know, it was nice in America to give the kiddie table, you know, a megaphone, give them some power, see what they do. We watched what they do. Not only are they allowing robbers to come through their front door, murderers and pillagers and marauders to come through the front door, but now, ladies and gentlemen, they're telling you that the marauders, the murderers, the killers, the thieves are the victims. And you, with the smashed pictures of your family on the wall, with your safe raided, with your family members bleeding, you're somehow responsible for it. You had the wrong locks on the door, you had the wrong message on you had the wrong tile, or you had the wrong siding on your house, or whatever nonsense. You're the reason for it. I mean, it's maddening. It's totally insane. And the nation's realizing that. I just want to leave you with this. You know, Donald Trump's speech will be legendary. And really, what's the guy doing? All he's doing is stating the obvious. I mean, you know, I get excited about it, and it's needed. But there's nothing. He's not reinventing the wheel. The left has drifted away from the shorelines of reality that far that somebody just saying, all he's saying is what is true. All he's saying is what is factual. And it's just novel. It's novel to these leftists. Ladies and gentlemen, I was watching CNN today. And this is the way that the media has decided to circle the wagons in this regard. Clay Aiken and some of these LGB, whatever, QT, WXYZ, they're out there. They're saying that it's Christians, Christian homophobia, that this is drawing an attention to Christian homophobia, and that we're wrong in pointing out Islam's unique temperature of the gay community, that it's actually Christians that are to blame. And they'll continue to do this. They got no choice. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to continue to push this kind of stuff. It comes down to survival. You know, we're Rome. We're being sacked. And it just comes down to survival. And the election is certainly that Waterloo, that mark. You know, we're going to determine, are we going to die a self-death of 1,000 cuts of leftist idiocy? Or are we just going to, or even for self-preservation reasons, in order to continue to keep a pulse as a people, as a culture, as a civilization, as a nation, turn away from this? In case there's any doubts, I mean, I leave you with this. Thank you for listening to the Brock Lawley program.
Wanting to pick a fight with Islam is insane.
Terrorists killed 10 journalists.
What you say may get you killed. Though I'm told Muslims support free speech.
What?
It's only Muslims who seem to be doing the killing over speech.
The more you stick your head in the sand, the bigger the problem gets.
4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq. We did. 4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq. I did. 4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq, and I did. I told you we'd end the war in Iraq. We did. I said we'd end the Iraq war. We did. I told you I'd end the war in Iraq, and we did. I ended the war in Iraq as I promised. In 2008, I promised we'd end the war in Iraq. We've ended it. I was able to keep my promise and end the war in Iraq. In 2008, I promised we would end the war in Iraq, and we've ended it. The war in Iraq is over. The war in Iraq is over from ending the war in Iraq. That's why I ended the war in Iraq. For the first time in 9 years, there are no Americans fighting in Iraq.
President, do you have any second thoughts about pulling all ground troops out of Iraq?
You know what I just find interesting is the degree to which this issue keeps on coming up, as if this was my decision.
Mr. President, I wanted to go back to something when you said that you have not underestimated ISIS's abilities. This is an organization that you once described as a JV team. Why can't we take out these bastards?
I don't know what more you want me to add. We do not pursue some of the other strategies that have been suggested. As I said, and so we are going to continue to pursue the strategy. We don't have a strategy, even though it does not offer the satisfaction, I guess.
But ISIS is gaining strength, aren't they?
Well, I don't think they're gaining strength. What is true is that from the start, our goal has been first to contain, and we have contained them.
According to police sources, one, maybe both, were detonated by suicide bombers wearing belts packed with explosives.
Paris attacks were committed by the Islamic State.
And he said, quote, the analogy we use around here sometimes, and I think is accurate, is if a JV team puts on Lakers uniforms, that doesn't make them Kobe Bryant.
And you say they shut you down because they felt this was essentially profiling of Muslims.
They specifically said that because we got the internal memos and they shut the case down.
And as political correctness, Homeland Security actually shut down an investigation that could have stopped this terrorist attack because they didn't want to profile a Muslim group. That's political correctness run amok. And we've seen this. We've got a president who is willing to condemn gun violence, but is unwilling to say the words Islamic radicalism. We just saw in this case that the neighbors of Farouk and Malik were afraid to turn them in, even though they saw suspicious activity, because they didn't want to be called Islamophobes. Political correctness kills, and we are in a miasma of political correctness in this country today, and it's got to stop.
Visit Brock on Facebook at Courage Culture, or on Twitter at The Atheist Anti. A Brock Lawley production.